are we funding U.S. tax dollars? Are we funding abortion overseas?
So the United States right now, according to the Helms Amendment that's been on the books in the U.S. for 50 years, says that we cannot directly fund abortion with U.S. tax dollars. But what we can do, and Trump got rid of this when he was in office, right, is indirectly fund abortion. And this is what the Biden administration's been doing. Last year we gave $90 million to UNICEF, and this money is then indirectly being used to fund and promote overpopulation, reducing the population essentially, eugenics, family planning, in especially developing countries. Primarily the money is going to Latin America and to Africa, and those are the really target countries that have actually had a culture of life for many, many years. Abortion's not legal, but they're going underground. They're actually paying people to attend a lecture on abortion, on why you should not have so many kids. And the problem is in countries like Uganda, where you earn $2 a day, if someone pays you $10 to attend a lecture, you'll be like, yeah, duh, right? Like, I'll get free food? Of course. And the problem is the pro-lifers, they're saying, hey, that's not okay, right? They're going to the same schools that UNICEF is going to, and they're giving pro-life talks, but they don't have all the fancy literature, right? They don't even have the money to even pay for transportation to get there or for Wi-Fi to call each other, but they're just trying to do it anyway because they know that this is the truth, right? That we have to stand up and fight for the fact that every single person matters from the moment of conception to natural death, and that just because you're in the womb, just because you're different, just because you have a disability, just because you're older, whatever, your life still matters, you're loved, you're made by God, and we need to actually fight for them and protect those lives.
So why would you say that, Planned Parenthood or pro-abortion movements in general, essentially they're targeting, you said countries with cultures of life.
Yes.
Why do you think that they're doing this, targeting these groups like this?
So, it makes complete sense. Their whole goal is to have death, right? They want to have the population be decreased. If we look back, really the roots of this all, it comes from Margaret Sanger and the eugenics movement, right? They say that there's groups of people that are not worthy of life, unfit. And that's why we see people like Bill Gates that are pushing birth control and they're pushing reducing the population in Africa. And those are some of the few countries that actually even have a population that's even growing, right? Because they have this culture of life. They have a culture of family. The family's been disintegrated in many of these cultures already. And I know we think like, okay, Latin America is like super Catholic, but I hate to say it, there's only one pro-life university group that's official in all of Mexico, to my knowledge. And this group, we just spoke with the leader who started this group. It was shut down by the university, just like all the other pro-life groups that have tried to start. They took it to the media in Monterrey, where abortion is not legal, right? So imagine, abortion's not legal, they try to have this pro-life club, it gets shut down by the school administration, they take it to the media, then they get reinstated. But they're still afraid to even talk about abortion. And so now we're actually talking to them about like, hey, how you can be a voice, right? And empowering them to be able to do that. But the thing is, 90% of the classmates at the university are atheists. So we already see that they've been targeting the younger generation and to degrade the morality, right? In Uganda and in Kenya, even the Christians, the women are having questions, what's your body count? How many people have you been sleeping with, right? So they're targeting the very foundation of morality of saying like, you should seek intimacy with someone as opposed to seeking intimacy with Christ and waiting for lifelong love. You should seek intimacy with someone just for that second. And then they know that this is going to degrade the foundations of the society. And then they want to earn people's money to have them get an abortion and pay for it to kill their baby that they made you kill. And then they're using the body parts. Well, in the US, we know this. They're using the body parts for research and they're earning money from it, right? So it's really a horrible, evil plan, honestly. But the good news is we can actually do something about it. So, and we don't have to be apathetic, and that's really what I want to do, is call my generation to stand up and not be afraid, because the true heroes, just like MLK, right, everybody looks to him and is like, oh, that's so cool, everything he did, right? But what he did was not popular in his day, right? There was people who risked their lives, and he actually gave his life to stand up for what was right and for true and the justice. And we see now a society that has come and progressed so far because of his work. And I think that's what we have to remember is it's going to be hard. Yeah, there's going to be rough days, but it's okay because God is with us and we have a bigger purpose, right? If we are rescuing the innocent, just like Esther did back 3,000 years ago, then that's why we're here. What are the crises of our day? And this is the greatest human rights crisis. Like, 1 out of 3 of our generation globally is missing because of abortion. 73 million a year, 99% of abortions are happening outside the US, and it's something that most people have never ever heard of before.
So I was in Ireland in 2018. I was just there for vacation, but I so happened to be there at the same time when they were voting on legalizing abortion in Ireland.
Right.
And it ended up being legalized. But shortly after that, I read something about how it was difficult for them to find someone to commit the abortions, like the
doctors.
The doctors.
Right, abortionists who actually want to do abortions. Yeah.
To commit the abortions. So because it's not part of their culture, it's brand new. Do cultures ever reject this after it becomes legal and it's just not their thing, and they look at this as too barbaric, and even if it's legal, we don't agree with this, and people don't want to commit the abortion?
How long does it take for a country and a culture to accept abortion?
Yeah.
We know in Ireland, just as you said, that's very true. Now, though, their abortion rate is dramatically increased, right? So, and I think what we have to do is we have to work backwards. Actually, I think in the US, we have a positive culture in many, many ways, and the world's actually looking to the United States. They see the fact that we overturned Roe versus Wade as such a positive thing, because they see now there's a developed country that doesn't have nationally legal abortion. And we look at places like Texas, right? We know there's some women that are still leaving the state to get abortions, but we actually know that there's a lot of help that the government's even giving to help women in pregnancy crisis, and we see that they're actually creating a culture of life where women are like, okay, I want to do something else. So yes, like what we're doing as well is we're working in countries like Uganda where abortion's not legal, but it's still culturally done very much. And they don't even have, oftentimes in rural villages, they're taking poison, literally. And sometimes the women are dying as well, right? But the babies. So what the groups are doing is they're actually changing the culture by coming alongside the girl in pregnancy crisis, right? So you have a high school student, she gets kicked out of her home because it's such a huge shame to be pregnant out of wedlock in Uganda. And so she gets kicked out of her home. A high school student hears, hey, this girl's gonna get an abortion. He goes over and chats with her and says, what's going on? She tells him, hey, my parents yelled at me, they kicked me out of the home. I really don't have any other option. And then he says, oh, hey, wait a second. I'm gonna go talk to the community elders. So imagine this is kind of a tribal culture, right? Goes and talks to the tribal leaders. And they say, hey, we'll go and we'll talk with you to the parents. So the pro-life club leaders are going talking with the tribal leaders to the parents. Then they can find a solution to get her back in her home. And we see actually cultures and communities being transformed, and now we have the pro-life club leaders sitting on the tribal council meetings with just the tribal elders. We see the parents of the community saying, hey, will you mentor our 9-year-old, our 12-year-old that's unruly? We see that people actually now, the girls are choosing life, they're having their kids, they're starting businesses to be able to provide for themselves. The pro-life clubs are raising pigs to be able to fund their work, and it's transforming the communities. And the communities are actually now asking for it. They're like, we need a pro-life club in our area. Even if we don't want any other club, we want this, right? And so I think that's the work that we all are called to do, right? I think that that's what's possible to be done, but we have to start very, very locally, right? We have to start every school, every university, every community, every city. And that's what we're really challenging our generation to do. And I really want to challenge the audience is to look around in your local area and to see what you can do to rescue the perishing, because that's the only way we're going to actually have a pro-life culture. And I do see it's possible. We see that possible in the small, very small things. We still have countries like Malta where abortion's not legal. They still have pro-life culture and they are a developed country. And we need to continue to stand with them, to stand for life, because if we don't have life, we don't have anything, right?
What are the common misconceptions when it comes to abortion that people don't understand?
I think it depends upon where we are in the world, right? So I think in the US, a lot of people think that abortion is something that we need if a woman's in a very difficult situation. Let's say she experienced rape, right? Or she's super young. And the reality is that every single person, they need help in that situation. A woman who's experienced rape, it's horrible. She needs help and healing. A girl who's super young, she needs help, right? This is a very difficult situation. But the reality is that getting an abortion doesn't actually solve the problem, right? It doesn't ever make a girl who had that horrible, horrible trauma of rape happen to her get rid of that trauma. What it just does is it actually creates an additional trauma. We know from statistics, right, from scientific analysis of many different peer-reviewed studies that abortion, it increases depression, it increases suicide rates, it increases drug abuse, alcohol abuse. And so by saying, hey, get an abortion, it'll put a Band-Aid, it'll solve your problem, we're actually creating more trauma in our society, more trauma for women. And instead, what a girl needs, right, when we get pregnant, as we know as women, right, there's something called pregnancy brain, which means you can't think straight. Now, why do we get pregnancy brain? It's because of the fact that our hormones are going crazy. You have a brand new baby growing in your womb, right? So your hormones are having to feed this baby. They're going way off the charts. That's why you're vomiting, you're throwing up, you can't think straight. And that's why girls naturally are so stressed out, especially when you're super young, when you don't have a supportive guy maybe in your life or supportive family. Why it's like, I feel like my life's coming to an end. What am I gonna do? Let me just go get an abortion. I think that's what oftentimes men say, like, okay, it's your body, your choice. I'm not gonna be involved. I'm not gonna say anything here. And the reason they do that is because they think that's the gentlemanly thing to do. But the reality is, when we as women are in such an emotionally unstable place because our body is growing this new baby and we're having to focus all of our energy on that, a girl really needs a guy to be there with them, or a family member or a friend, and say, hey, I know you can't, you're super nauseous, what do you feel like eating? Maybe she'll be like, please, some lemons, some grapes, and some cheese, right? And so we need then someone to actually go like, okay, sit there, it'll be all right, like I'll take care, I'll make sure that we get the kids' room set up, right? And just to really be that supportive person for her, to help her in this really emotionally crazy time. And oftentimes once you get through the first 12 weeks of pregnancy, your hormones settle down a bit, and that's when you actually feel good. And that's what the thing is, if we just help women, right? And the vast majority of abortions happen in the first 12 weeks, right? Which, as I said, it makes sense when you realize what an emotionally difficult place a woman's in. But if we just come alongside women, then we're gonna have the support that we need to actually be able to have this baby. And I think one of the things is, internationally as well, people don't know like ultrasounds. They don't have access to them easily, especially in developing countries, like in Uganda and Kenya. And when we were there, just showed people a fetal model. I was in Uganda in a rural village, and there was a lady, she looked at this model of a 12-week-old baby the size of my hand, and she said, is this real? She was angry. She said, is this real? Is this really the size of a 12-week-old baby? And I said, yeah. And she said, I got an abortion a month ago, and my baby was 12 weeks old. And she didn't know this. She said, I'm hurting. My body hurts. Emotionally, I'm hurting. And I was able to tell her, like, hey, I'm sorry, and I love you, and I forgive you. And God loves you, and He forgives you too. And there's hope for you, right? And I think that's the message we need every single woman to hear, and every single man, because 1 out of 3 women over age 45 in the US have experienced abortion. And globally, it's similar numbers, right? And that means that there's a man whose child was also lost. And they need to know that there is hope, and they can find healing and forgiveness, and they can then actually become a voice for the voiceless, to help other people to not have to go through the same suffering that they've had to in silence.